Good morning everyone. Welcome back to the IHCAN Summit. I would like to thank you all for being here today. We're all really excited to be back again. I'd also like to thank our sponsors and exhibitors for being here today too. Please do make sure to visit all of their stands during the lunch and refreshment breaks. You will see that you all have a delegate pack and a goodie bag. All of the information and the slides are in the delegate pack. But if you have any questions, please find me or any of the event team around the venue. So I will stop using our first speaker's time and introduce Mary Beth Gonzalez and Professor Sarper Diler from the Nicholas Gonzalez Foundation. Over to you both. Thank you.
So good morning again. We have actually 90 minutes to talk, and in the beginning I was just ready to talk for 3 hours, so please stop me if I go further. And I checked, Tom is over there, the next speaker. Happy that he is here, because otherwise the organizer will let me speak the whole day and I don't want that. So this is me in general. I'm a medical doctor and hematopoietic stem cell transplant coordinator, and I'm doing a lot of job in patient advocacy as well, and for the last couple of years I'm the chair of the scientific advisory board of the Nicholas Gonzalez Foundation. So those are what we're going to go through today. I'm just going to share with you a couple of good outcomes for a range of cancer diagnosis and compare with this year data of the NIH. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what is cancer and is cancer genetic. That's because very important. And I'm just going to walk you through very briefly, because it's a very long one, the Trophoblast theory of cancer, which actually originated from UK, I would say. Talk about a little bit about metabolic typing and autonomic dominance, principles of the Gonzalez Protocol, how do we offer hope through the Gonzalez Guardians. We call ourselves Guardians. We are 6 doctors around the world who are practicing the Gonzalez Protocol. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to tell you why I'm so passionate about the Gonzalez Protocol and tell you my secrets. Okay, so to start with, I'm just going to share 4 cases with you this morning, very recent cases, and let's begin. The first case is actually a mystery or a surprise for you that I'm going to present. This guy, he is in the room with us, so you'll be able to meet this guy at the end of the talk. The second person you probably know by name. He's from UK. He is kind of a popular person in the UK, and this is going to be at the end. He couldn't make it to, I mean, he just wanted to come over here, but he had some family issues, so just got a short video of him so that you're going to see at the end as well. But the other 2 I'm just going to share right now. This is a patient, 67 years, male, well-differentiated grade 3 neuroendocrine carcinoma. Primary malignancy was in the liver, and he had a lot of metastasis, liver, lung, and skeletal. Diagnosed February 22, lost 42 kilograms in the last 6 months, and he is now 13 months on the protocol. Well, when you're doing a holistic medicine, it's very difficult to do a statistical analysis, but you have to have all your records before you start the protocol and afterwards. So this is the pathology report. I mean, I think you have all the slide handouts with you, so you can just, because I'm just a little bit speeding up, so that you can just check these pathologies and the comparisons at the end of the therapy or during the therapy. So he had 69 mitotic count and Ki index, Ki 67 index was 83% in the beginning and now dropped down to 20%. Ki7, for your information, is a protein in cells that increases as the cells prepare to divide. And the SEER data, SEER, is the Surveillance and Epidemiology and Results report of NIH, National Institute of Health in the United States. So when you have distant metastasis, you have a 5-year overall survival rate of 23%. But if you have multiple metastases, it just drops down to some 10%. So this is the imagery results March 22, and then a year after. You can see the lung is clear, liver and the skeletal system, there's significant regression of the tumor size. And he was pretty in a bad shape when we took the patient on, and now he's just enjoying life in his summer resort with his son. And sometimes I go there and stay a couple of days to see him, and then run away from my work because you have to do it sometimes because you have to have some time for you. The fourth chair is dedicated for a 59 years old male. He had adenocarcinoma of the head of the pancreas, stage 4, when we got him. He is actually treated with one of my fellow doctors at the Nicholas Gonzalez Foundation, Antonio Jimenez from Mexico. He is on the protocol for 18 months, and he is really doing great. This is the pathology report. As it is a stage 4 cancer, he had metastases all over, including the lymph nodes. So those are the onset and ongoing follow-up imagery where the tumor really regressed from 4 centimeters to 1.9 centimeters. Actually, this is one of the tumor markers that this patient had, and as you can see, there was a abrupt decrease in the beginning, and then you can see a slight increase. And if you just go to an oncologist and ask to comment on this, he would say maybe there's a metastasis. But on the protocol, we experience this very much, that there's a tumor lysis and all the markers within the cells just go into the periphery, and then we're actually measuring this tumor lysis syndrome effect. So the slight rise didn't just give us a heads up, so it's fine. So just this fourth person, a short message. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. Can you do it from? Oh, there you go.
Well, God has used the Gonzalez Protocol, and specifically Dr. Tony, in just an amazing way to change everything. My view, my wellness, and of course the cancer is, I believe I'm healed, and it's going to go away, and it's going to be, I just feel so good, and I'm blessed by the Gonzalez Protocol and everything in it.
Yes, and Mary Beth, I just want to thank you for picking up your husband's legacy and allowing it to continue to be a blessing to other people. We know that it has cost all of you something to do this, and we know that you do it out of your heart to actually see people be healed. You don't want to treat symptoms, you want to go for root causes, and you want to see people be healed. And we are so grateful for the call on your life that you guys have said yes, and we want to encourage you in the fight because you are making a huge difference in our lives. I still have my husband here. 18 months later, I wake up with him every day, and I thank God for you and for the miracle of healing that God is giving us. And so
through the Gonzalez Protocol,
through the Gonzalez Protocol. Yeah, we just want to encourage you and say, keep going. You know, even if you don't see the change If you see the change in one patient, you've made a difference. And Rick has been able to bring a lot of other people hope and encouragement through his story too. So just this one has had ripple effects that you aren't even aware of. So we're so grateful, and we pray for you guys, and we are so grateful for you carrying this torch.
Thank you and bless you.
So just a couple of words why people run away from classical cancer treatments. I was also raised by the orthodox treatment, the classical treatment, and then moved, and I'll tell you at the end why I moved to holistic treatment as well. So the first reason is this satisfaction. You can see a lot of side effects and adverse effects of the drugs used, or the methods that they use are too technologically oriented or too costly. There is a need for personal control, so alternative or holistic or integrative, whatever you call, is less authoritarian, more personal autonomy there, and there's a philosophical congruence part as well. So these therapies are more compatible with patients' view, either religious or personal or whatever. So those are the reasons why people choose more and more non-classical methods to get the treatment. And there is an unfortunate truth for most cancer patients, because when they want to go to the other side, they got belittled and ridiculed, got a blind cold shoulder if they intend to do another treatment, and sometimes really compelled to get chemo and other, the so-called smart drugs, which are both cellularly and financially toxic, sometimes with their attending physician, sometimes with one of their family members, just push them to the conventional side. So are all novel therapies, I'm talking about the chemo and the immunotherapy, garbage? Just gonna give you a couple of examples. Clinical trials initiated between 2008 and 2009. I mean, you look at by the end of 2013, 21% were discontinued, 34% were completed but not published, and 77% they can't even find the authors, so they just gone into waste. Again, from the clinical trial research rate, another paper for you, 25% of all phase 3 parallel 2-arm, that's the golden standard of doing the clinical trials, randomized clinical trials, registered in 2013 and 14 were incomplete, and another quarter were completed but not reported. This is only clinical trials in gastric cancer. And interestingly, 119 out of 137 randomized clinical trials had one or more features of research waste, so you can't really use it. When I, maybe some 20 years ago, started my career, I said, why do governments let the pharma do the clinical trials instead? Well, give a chance to academia and universities so that they can do probably more objective and better clinical trials. And here is the result. So 778 clinical trials run by European universities are verifiably in violation of the EU transparency rules. Well, UK is at the top in a green zone, but still 30% of the clinical trials done by the universities in UK are not published. Having said this, look at the red zone. Norway, France, Italy, and Sweden publish 0 clinical trials done by the universities. So this is really mind-boggling. So. Just another source that waste in cancer drug costs in US more than $3 billion a year. Actually, if you find this book, I just recommend you to read it. This is a book by Margaret Kumo, a provocative book actually, A World Without Cancer. She is the sister of the former New York governor, Mario Cuomo, and she revealed in the book that the 3 P's, personalities, politics, and profit, are obstructing the real progress in the war against cancer. So the problem, going quickly here, around half of all clinical trial results are never made public, and patients harmed because we really do not know how safe and effective the treatments are. So the problem they have here, first the publication bias. Results of around half of the trials never get published. Trials with negative results are far less likely to get published. And this is even more serious, evidence distortion. So negative trials misreport outcomes as positive. And this is evidence-based report. Okay. So here you see a couple of survival terms, and again, 20 years ago, I was just hearing, maybe 25, just overall survival or cure, right, in the patients. Now we have a lot of terminology entered into the era, and manipulated survival terms are subject to measurement error and bias, and really may not capture the entire treatment effect of a given drug. But why do they do this? Because at least 60 to 70% of the clinical trial drugs are in the gray zone. So by this way, with the manipulated terms, they can get those drugs into the market very easily. So cancer diagnosis is very problematic for the families and patients because of uncertainty, loss, and irreversible interruptions in life, and it's really difficult to navigate. And conventional treatments continue to disappoint and lessen the quality of life, which is very important. I remember we've done in several cancer centers around Europe and asked the patients, the families, and the doctors, what do they think about the end results of these clinical trials? The doctors and the family members just want their patient to live longer, right? But not the patients, right? The patients want to live maybe shorter, but with a high quality of life, and this is very important. So here we offer a story of hope with the Gonzalez treatment. They want us to believe that cancer is an intractable disease and it's a kind of death sentence, but it's not. So, well, meaningful changes cannot happen without those who catalyze those changes, and we call those the Mavericks. Newton, Da Vinci, Galileo, Einstein, Tesla, etc. They're multidimensional with unusual perspectives and skill sets who push the boundaries what is common or acceptable practice. So I'm always inspired by people who stretches and try something new beyond their comfort zone. And this is how we make progress. And Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez was one of those mavericks. So understanding the value that such people bring to the world is an important contribution to our account of what it takes to create change and bring value to the world, especially if we care about moving humanity forward. So, just to change a little bit of this topic, because really we're being challenged by the mainstream medicine. This guy, Bruno Guardon, I'm going to talk a little bit about him. We know that the sun is the center of the solar system, and Earth and all other planets are revolving around. But for many centuries it was believed the other way around. So people thought that the Earth was in the center and the sun and all other planets were revolving around. And it was not really easy task to change that fixed idea. And so this guy was burned to death because at that time trying to change that paradigm was kind of challenging the Catholic Church, which was the institution of power and dominance at that time. So he was burned to death at the stake of challenging the church. By the way, Copernicus, Galileo, and Kepler, they all said the plain truth. They were arrested, but they were not burned to death, just because they had some political or royal connections that helped them prevent this. So we are here now in London, so anybody who has some royal relations, come forward at the coffee break. Maybe you can save our lives. So I like this quote by Buckminster Fuller: "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And this is what Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez did. He is classically and conventionally educated. He's actually an immunologist. He was also doing the hematopoietic stem cell transplantation work. He was a unique individual, a free thinker, saved thousands and thousands of cancer patient lives in his private practice in New York for 30 years, and died unexpectedly in 2015, unfortunately. The Gonzalez Protocol is a scientifically proven, revolutionary, non-toxic nutritional enzyme treatment for total body healing with a history of more than 40 years of good outcomes. Here are some of his books where some of the cancer cases with their stories are presented. Conquering Cancer Volume 1 and 2, and then Proof of Cancer with 25 cases. So we're really moving into a new phase of our existence on this planet, and that is the chronic disease phase, and cancer is also considered to be a chronic disease. And the good news is that the Gonzalez Protocol, I mean, this is not the subject of today's talk, but the Gonzalez Protocol is working with most of the chronic diseases as well with success. So just gonna show you this slide so you know what we treat. GBS, for your information, is Guillain-Barré syndrome. What else? You know, this is a psychiatric syndrome, obsessive compulsive disease, and some other diseases, including stress as well, chronic stress, which turns out to be anxiety and depression, etc. So what is cancer? Of course, everybody knew cancer, I mean, from their education and from the literature, from the symposia that you've been attended. Here I show you a very recent paper of Sanchez-Vega, where they studied the gene alteration frequencies in 33 different types of cancer in more than 10,000 tumor samples with their respective signaling pathways. They also measured the average mutation count and altered genomes. And I mean, when you see this paper, you say, okay, there is another evidence that cancer is genetic. So is cancer really a genetic disease? Well, not the cancer itself, but they also characterize the metastatic patterns related to genomes. So not only cancer, their metastases are believed or taught to medical students that it's also genetic. But, cancer, by its nature, is only 10 to 11% genetic based. But I don't know, because I just prepared my slides a couple of weeks ago, if they changed yesterday night or just before. You can see here, is it? Yeah. So this is the National Cancer Institute of NIH, and if you just Google in and see that page, is cancer a genetic disease? Yes, it's a genetic disease. It says because of the somatic mutation theory, where mutations occur in the proto-oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to walk you through a theory which kind of disproves this. Maybe I shouldn't get very far away. It's not a new theory or a model, but still people just want us to not to emphasize this theory, and probably it got forgotten for a century or so. And this integrated gene network, you can find it everywhere for every type of cancers with their respective mutations, signaling pathways, new proteins, etc. And pharma is just pointing out one signaling pathway and block that, and that is called the smart drug, right? So you see how complicated. This is one of the simplest one for you, but it's normally more complicated. And it really takes me back to my childhood, because we didn't have many confections at that time. So this is the sewing pattern sheet in 1970 that my mother used to sew. So it looks kind of similar, but anyway. So, I mean, this can be a subject of just one talk, but I'm just going to briefly summarize the Trophoblast model, or the theory of the Trophoblast model of cancer, postulated by Dr. John Beard, a Scottish embryologist, so maybe some 120 years ago. So in a nutshell, the standard embryology books teach medical students that at the 8th cell stage of development, the blastomeres undergo compaction and segregate into inner and outer cells. And at the 6th cell stage, which is called the morula, they divide into two, inner cell and outer cell. And the inner cell constitutes the embryo, and the outer cell does the placenta. So I'm gonna mention 4 observations of Dr. Beard so that you get a clear understanding what this theory explains. He said in a nutshell that trophoblasts give rise to placenta, but at the same time it gives rise to the embryo, right? And he studied thousands of embryos from many different species to come with that idea. And when you look at the name of trophoblast, it comes from ancient Greek, trephane and blastos. Trephane is nourishing, giving food, and blastos is generating or proliferating, etc. But actually the ancient Greeks knew that it is gonna make the placenta and embryo at the same time, talking about the trophoblast. So the second observation is really interesting, because you know, when the protozoa and ovum just comes together and becomes embryo, all the characteristics of this embryo is exactly the same, identical with the properties of the cancer cell. So I can say, maybe it's going to be bold, in order to come to life healthy, you have to be cancerous in the early stages of your creation. So those properties, invasive, undifferentiated, proliferative, angiogenic, resisting immune surveillance, reduced cell adhesion, and secreting human chorionic gonadotropin, are exactly the same of cancer cells as the properties of the trophoblast. So the third, I mean, going back, so yeah, we are created as a cancer group of cells, but we born healthy. So how does it come? So something should have happened in between, right? Some days, something should have happened in our bodies, so we are not born cancer. And that is the third observation. The third observation says that the transformation of trophoblast to stable placenta and embryo occurs at the same time as the pancreatic enzymes, pancreas develop, and the pancreatic enzymes start secreting the enzyme. So at the day 26 in humans, it's going to be different maybe with other mammals, that the trophoblast becomes placenta, and the digestive enzymes, the tyrosine and other enzymes, begin secretion from the pancreas. But at day 56, the cells called the fetus, right? And the fetus doesn't need digestive enzymes, do they? No. So why do we have the digestive enzymes starting secretion at day 56? And he also found that these enzymes convert the cancer cells into somatic cells, and that's why at day 56, and that's why we are born healthy and not with a cancer. So the fourth observation is the existence of what he called wayward trophoblasts. Those trophoblasts who are not converted into somatic, they go and sleep in all around your body and then sleep there, right? Stay dormant. And then if one day, if there's a trigger like radiation, cigarette smoking, or any of the personal materials like detergents and anything that triggers these sleeping cancer cells, they just wake up and then become, it's simple as this, right? So if the trophoblast doesn't become placenta, that means if the digestive enzymes at day 56 is not there, you are born with a cancer. That's choriocarcinoma. That proves that at day 56, the digestive enzymes are regulating. So it's a regulatory signal to convert the cancer cells into normal somatic cells. The core predictions are, in short, adult stem cells are ectopic trophoblasts. They have migrated to other tissues in early embryogenesis. Pancreatic enzymes are the key signal that converts the trophoblasts into stable placenta. Cancer arises from trophoblasts that have escaped the regulatory control and stay dormant. And pancreatic enzymes can be used to treat cancer. So Dr. Beard was nominated for a Nobel Prize at his time, but he couldn't get it. I'll tell you why. So those are the two books that I recommend to understand the details of the trophoblast theory of cancer. By himself on the left, the enzyme treatment of cancer, and by Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez and his assistant, the trophoblast and the origins of cancer. So here comes the lady, Madame Marie Curie. She's a French guy. I also have a French nationality, but I'm objective here. So she came long afterwards and said, convinced people actually that X-ray was the way to go because it's so much effective and safe, right? And she was 2 times honored and one of the rarest people who got the Nobel Prize 2 times with the Nobel Prize, and became very popular at his time, very famous. And poor Dr. Beard and the trophoblast theory of cancer was immediately forgotten. So this is called the scientific progress. And but interestingly, I mean, I've been part of my education was in Paris, in France. So I visited without knowing the trophoblast theory of cancer, the Curie Institute, right? It's at the old city, and it was amazing that you cannot get into her room without a special shielding dress, which killed her because she's exposed to X-ray, right? Not long after she got the Nobel Prize, so you can't get into her room safely. And the brilliant Dr. John Beard, who proposed the trophoblast theory of cancer, was buried, got forgotten, and he died in obscurity. So just a couple of literature to tell you that the pancreatic enzymes really work for cancer treatment. This is a quite good summary with Dr. Isaacs. Chronologically and scientifically, she's explaining a new support for an old theory, so you can just go and read and get an understanding of the digestive enzymes, namely pancreatic enzymes. But just going to give you a couple of examples so that you understand. It began in 2005 by Novak and his friends, they work on a culture, tumor cells and in mouse models, and they reported that the pancreatic enzymes really work. Plus, a couple of other investigators work on a mouse model of different kinds of cancers. You can see here sarcoma, ovarian, melanoma, pancreatic cancers, and they have found that there is an increased survival time, so it prolonged the survival in mouse models. And the third that I'm going to explain in the next slide, that the pancreatic enzyme mixture suppressed epithelial mesenchymal transition and promoted cell differentiation. So this is the fourth article. Actually, you have it's published in Nature Research. So cancer stem cell subpopulation, which is found within the tumor, is responsible for metastasis and cancer relapse. And they showed here that the mixture of cancer stem cell derived human pancreatic cell line called BXPC3 is actually impairs the tumor engrafting. They also showed that the cancer stem cell specific markers are markedly reduced with the exposure to pancreatic enzyme mixture. And not only that, which is also showed again on the right diagram, but here they also showed that the rate of the cell proliferation is markedly reduced. So it shows that the pancreatic enzymes could work very well with cancers. So in a nutshell, the pancreatic enzyme mixture resulted in epithelial mesenchymal transition, cancer stem cell related gene suppression, and has expression of tumor suppressor genes, and downregulation of migration and metastasis genes, and regulation of MAP kinase signaling pathways. So I probably missed telling you that, because I said it's only 10% of genetic nature when we're talking about cancers. It's like a chicken and egg situation. So are we getting cancers because of all the mutations that I have shown you previously? Or are we having these mutations because we have cancer in the first place? So you have to understand why the mainstream medicine has flipped the script and the truth so that it opens gates to billion-dollar drug business. But just warn you here, because you can find hundreds of pancreatic enzymes on the market. Not all pancreatic enzymes and glandulars on the market work, because they probably lost most of their activity, which is not very well controlled. So Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez designed the formulation, and Mary Beth would probably explain if you have any questions, because I know that he traveled down to New Zealand to find the porks without pesticides, etc., etc. So those kind of things. Anyway, so just want to talk about William Donald Kelly. Who's William Donald Kelly? He is a dentist from Grapevine, Texas, and he developed pancreatic cancer. So stayed in bed and asked her mother to bring a couple of books from the library of the university at that time, and he accidentally, maybe it's not an accident, but just got the Trophoblast Theory of Cancer book, and then he developed a nutritional base. He cured himself, by the way, and he developed a nutritional based do-it-yourself cure for cancer, and he claimed over 90% effective treatments, provided that the body is not destroyed with conventional drugs. And I think this is his wife Susie, and he treated his wife also. I don't know if it's because of the treatment they got married or before, no idea, but he showed his wife that this protocol is also working. So he said if the person's organs working at anywhere near 100% efficiency, gets all the nutrients it needs, relieves its structural problems, stimulates the glands to do their jobs, cleans out any accumulated toxins, and maintain proper mental and emotional states, The body will first be able to handle all sorts of problems, rebalance itself, and eliminate almost any disease. Dr. Gonzalez met Dr. Kelly in 81. Actually, at that time, Dr. Gonzalez was working with Dr. Robert Good, the father of modern immunology. But Dr. Good, I think on purpose, he just authorized Dr. Gonzalez and go visit Dr. Kelly and then see the patient files and interview with the patients, etc., etc. So he was at a crossroad. I told you that he was an immunologist, but at the end of the day, when he is sure that this treatment, this protocol is working, he decided to choose the road not taken. And he refined and utilized the principles of the Kelly program and created the Gonzalez Protocol, which is identical of how we use today. So he chose the road not taken, and I like this because this is a poem by Robert Frost, and just gonna read a couple of lines. The two roads diverge in a yellow wood, and sorry I couldn't travel both. And at the end, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages. Hence, two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Like all of yourself who just are keen on choosing the holistic instead of the conventional. And I appreciate that. So clinical holistic medicine has its roots from Hippocrates. He advised his patient nutrition along with other exercise, massage, and hydrotherapy to get stronger and beat their diseases. We all know this, that all individuals must eat organic. Very difficult in today's world, but still avoid processed food and furnish the body with all necessary nutrients and for a normal, healthy function. Am I on time? Yeah, I'm good. Good. So the Gonzalez Protocol essentials are those: we replace the deficiencies, either the diet, supplementation, and enzymes, remove all the interferences, detox routines, organic food, water filtration, structural alignment, EMFs, etc., and provide sufficient energy either by metabolic balancing that I'm going to explain you in a minute, increase the enzyme potentials and spirituality, etc. So how do you effectively individualize a patient's program then? Well, you can just extend this list, but what makes an individual unique? Many other things, but it just boils down to genetic and epigenetic, including your spiritual and mental and emotional makeup. Just waiting for people to take maybe pictures, but I think you have those in your slides. Okay, go on. So all truly holistic paradigms have a reliable system to individualize treatment for patients, like homeopathy. I'm also doing homeopathy because I really find it really interesting. Herbalism, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, Jungian psychoanalysis, and astrology. So the main balancing of the Gonzalez Protocol is balancing the autonomic nervous system. As you know, autonomic nervous system has sympathetic and parasympathetic ends, but you may have some people just falling in between in this spectrum. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows this, but sympathetic persons are go-go persons, flight or fight people, and parasympathetic, that's how I learned from my physiology lessons, are people just eating, reading, and digesting. So we also do the metabolic typing, and the pH is very important in that. Sympathetic dominants, they have acidotic metabolic tendency, whereas the parasympathetics are alkaline tendency. And metabolic typing is expressed as the autonomic dominance over metabolic efficiency. When we're talking about metabolic efficiency, it's the ability of the patient to assimilate the nutrient value of a food fully. And when a quantity of nutrient is put in your gut, it is how efficient it's successfully transited and used either as an energy source or as functional and structural elements. So metabolic typing determines the proper nutritional program for each individual. It has qualitative and quantitative aspects. The qualitative ones deals with the sympathetic autonomic nervous system in general, and the quantitative content is dealing with the degree of the cooked to raw food, degree of supplements, degree of digestive support needed, etc. And when we're talking about efficiency in metabolic typing, that tends leaning towards high amount of raw food and less supplementation and vice versa. So it's also important that we may have the same clinical picture with the two type of autonomic dominant persons. For example, looking at allergy, we have some other examples as well. In allergies, if that's a parasympathetic person, there's an hyperactive immune function. Whereas in the sympathetic, if you see allergies, it is not because of hyperactive immune function, it's due to adrenal insufficiency. So looking at the entire picture in designing the protocol is essential. It's also very important that you can find many different metabolic typings out there, but which is not really identical to what we do, because it's really a complex, intricate process which we take into consideration when designing the protocol. So sympathetic dominance people are baseline acidic and they should be vegetarian leaning in general, and parasympathetic dominant people, their baseline alkaline and should be carnivore leaning. Dr. Gonzalez quote, as long as we put the right fuel into our bodies by eating the right food and for our metabolic type, the autonomic nervous system will be in balance. And this is very important. We're born with an autonomic nervous system, as I could say, your factory setting, but your mom didn't know. So if you have a couple of siblings, they're all fed with the same food, same bread, etc. So they just pushed your autonomic nervous system to the other side. So that's why some of your siblings may die healthy, right, with age, but some others get heart disease or cancer or some other chronic diseases. So we have 7 different metabolic types in the Gonzalez Protocol, either extreme vegetarian to extreme carnivore, and in the middle we have efficient balance, and we just numbered them. We also play around with the vitamins and minerals to get what is needed or to compensate what is excess. For example, I'll give you an example of potassium and manganese, which pushes your autonomic nervous system towards the parasympathetic side, which is called sympatolytic or parasympathetic stimulating effect. On the other hand, calcium and phosphorus would push you to the sympathetic side, so we also call this vagolytic effect, and vice versa. So looking at some metabolic archetypes, sympathetic people really live in the tropical areas, whereas parasympathetics, like the Eskimos, live in the Arctic. Sympathetics live in the hot climate, and we know that hot climate alkalizes and stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, whereas parasympathetic, which we find in the Arctic zone, the cold climate would acidify and stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, and local nutrition in the Arctic zone is animal-based, high animal-based acidic foods. Well, Dr. Gonzalez well said this quote, just summarizing it. I don't know how many years ago the globe has just one piece of land, and it was called Pangea, right? So probably some of you in the room has some Eskimo genes, and they like eating meat. So I was just discussing with Catherine Sauvé from the World Health Organization International Agency for Research on Cancer. They say, eat veggie and be healthy and don't get cancer. This is not always true, right? It's a small percentage, but if you say eat veggie to a person with an Eskimo gene, then you're going to get him some blood cancers, for example. So, but they don't care. I mean, we discussed, but this was a never-ending discussion. So they said we care about the majority. So they keep saying the same thing: don't eat meat and eat veggie. So, well, in my talk, I'm mentioning a second dentist, Weston Price. When he retired, he became a cross-cultural, did anthropological research, mainly looking at the dental health and the relation with nutrition and lifestyles. And he just traveled 5 continents and maybe more than 10, maybe 14 primitive cultures and isolated communities. And he came with these conclusions: no people thriving on a plant-based diet only, no group was building and maintaining good bodies exclusively on plant diet, and if civilized man is to survive, he said, he must incorporate the fundamentals of primitive nutritional wisdom into his modern life, because he found no cancer with the traditional people. We have actually 3 pillars. They're all personalized, right? Just to mention one more. The first one is personalized nutrition. The second one is personalized supplementation. And this is the third pillar, which is detox. We are removing material toxins, but not only that. We're mitigating the toxic sources, like dealing with the cookware, cleaning supplies, organic and enhances endogenous detox pathways, and supplementation. We do the coffee enemas, gut rehab, Jewish fats, liver cleanses, castor oil packs, and Epsom salt baths. I can't have my talk without talking about spirituality. Dr. Gonzalez was a spiritual man. I also consider myself spiritual as well. And this I found in holy books, verses in Bible, in Torah and Quran, that faith is a gift and we must relentlessly pursue faith. And Dr. William Kelly also said, if you're missing the spiritual component of your treatment, you're not getting a full cure for the patient. And you probably saw this in some other meetings. This is the pyramid of healing. We just give orally nutrition and supplementation, etc., which empowers the other levels. But the 5th level is very important, because if you have a patient who is not believing, it's not only believing in God, right? Believing in your treatment, in him or herself, etc. It's likely that he might or she might fail. And in my practice at the Ovitel Institute between years 2004 and 2022, 92% cope their diseases with spiritual beliefs. 86% who fully recovered thought religion was a core component to their treatment. 57% more spiritual after diagnosis, and 39% more spiritual after they are really cured. So spirituality is very important in serious illness. This is a paper of Balboni and Dr. van der Wiele. And I talked to Dr. Tyler van der Wiele, who's an epidemiologist at the Harvard. He said focusing on the spirituality is actually handling the person as a whole, and it is not always with the disease situations, also in health. So to maintain your health, spirituality is a must. So just a little bit about a clinical trial done in 1998. Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez was invited at the NCI to present his best cases to the National Cancer Institute, and he hoped, and they invited him to do a clinical trial in 98, and he hoped that this venture would probably start the crosstalks and cooperation between the conventional medical people and the holistic side. but he was wrong. So it turned out to be a complete disrupted or sabotage clinical trials, and he wrote this book, What Went Wrong, the Truth Behind the Clinical Trial of the Enzyme Treatment of Cancer. Those who are interested could go and read, but in a nutshell, there was a lack of lead, there was lack of adherence, there was lack of informed consent, authorship, arm bias, exclusion criteria, and fine-tuning was allowed in the chemo side, but not in the protocol side. And the very interesting thing is that they didn't let the team of Dr. Gonzalez interfere or lead this clinical trial. And the guy, Dr. John Chabot, who led the clinical trial, was also leading the gemcitabine, a popular chemotherapy drug at that time. So that was a deliberate sabotage, and he wrote that book. So having said all this, she is more of a superhero, more than any other Maverick characters out there, and without her, the life-changing Gonzalez Protocol would not come to life again. So please join me in welcoming Mary Beth Gonzalez, the widow of Dr. Gonzalez.
Well, thank you, Sarper. You represent the Nicholas Gonzalez Foundation so very well. I remember when you first contacted me in July of 2018. And you were asking how you could contribute to our mission to help prevent Dr. Gonzalez's work from fading into oblivion, like the work of Dr. John Beard and Dr. Kelly, who you heard about earlier. Well, at the time, we were developing a curriculum for educating doctors in the Gonzalez Protocol, but it was really early days. And all I knew is I needed volunteers who would help do some of the heavy lifting. I needed people, doctors, who had Nick's intellect and his courage, and I knew that I needed somebody who I could trust. But when you flew from Istanbul to New York City just to have lunch with me, I prayed that you were the real deal, but I still brought my bodyguard. During that 3-hour lunch, I was fully convinced of your commitment. And now, 5 years later, you've proven to me to be a dear friend, a compassionate healer, a respected team leader, and a very valuable resource to our foundation as the chairman of our scientific advisory board. So thank you. May I have the clicker?
Sorry.
So now that you've all heard a little bit about the extraordinary success of the Gonzalez Protocol, both past and present, it may seem to you that it was inevitable that Dr. Gonzalez's work was going to carry on. But when Nick died in my arms at home that night in July of 2015, nothing was certain. Nothing made any sense. And I didn't have many answers. But I knew that his protocol worked. And I knew, from having had a front row seat to seeing hundreds of miracle patients over the whole 15 years that we were married. So even though there wasn't a succession plan, I had to make one because I inherited his medical practice. I inherited his New York City office rental lease and more than 300 boxes of files. Okay, well, I knew I couldn't keep that cure for cancer boxes in a storage unit. And I knew his work was too important to be silenced. I personally knew the protocol because I've been on it since our third date. But I wasn't a doctor. And I knew I needed a medical team to help me help his patients and other patients for the future. So with prayerful insight and the legal guidance of one of Dr. Gonzalez's patients and friends and family, we started the nonprofit Research and Education Foundation, the Nicholas Gonzalez Foundation. And our original goal was to further document Dr. Gonzalez's enzyme treatment and then educate doctors so that we could help both Nick's patients, but also patients in the future. Well, we've come a long way in the past 8 years. Several of Dr. Gonzalez's colleagues volunteered to help edit his final manuscripts for publication. Together, we published 4 books in the first 4 years. And you'll see you have a brochure in your bag of all the different books. So we published 4 books in the first 4 years. All the books that Nick had written that were in his computer just needed some fine-tuning. And I inherited his small book publishing company. So fortunately, we had the means to actually publish these books. Well, then I recruited a different team of doctors and medical school professors to help design an educational curriculum. Now, that took 3 years. It resulted in a 10-day in-person seminar. We held more than 70 hours of instruction. All the different doctors studied for 10 months before they even came to the seminar. And we created a 700-page textbook and manual. And that became the foundation for their education. Later that same year, I published Dr. Gonzalez's official biography, The Maverick MD, which is really a medical thriller. It's written by Mary Swander, who was one of his patients. She's an award-winning author and playwright, and she had been his patient for 20 years, so she knew the protocol and Dr. Gonzalez backwards and forwards. And then more recently, I published my first book. It's a cookbook, and Nick taught me how to cook. But our focus now is on helping all these new patients and gathering research data to further document the protocol's success. You see, I knew that it was critical to demonstrate to the scientific world that the good outcomes that Dr. Gonzalez accomplished could actually be duplicated by other doctors. You see, it wasn't that he was a guru with some special mystical powers. I knew that Dr. Gonzalez couldn't and wouldn't have just trusted anybody with this work, because it's really actually quite complicated to design and administer these highly complex, customized protocols. So after a rigorous application process where we had over 100 doctors apply, they studied for 10 months, they took a series of very complicated exams, and now several doctors around the world have been certified in the Gonzalez Protocol. We call them the Gonzalez Guardians because they're the protectors of Dr. Gonzalez's nutritional enzyme therapy. And we are dedicated to keeping it pure so his scientific approach and his high standards are maintained. Now, one of the ways that we're doing that is that all the medical files for all the new patients are reviewed by another doctor on the team to make sure that the program is being implemented properly. And see, without Dr. Gonzalez here to help us, we actually have to help each other. So we've built this network where we rely on each other. And in addition to Sarper, we have Gonzalez Guardian doctors in the US, Jamaica, and Mexico. So now what I hope is that you will help us spread this good news so we can have more prospective patients around the world realize that this is an option. One of the biggest lessons for me over the past 8 years has been the amount of people who really aren't interested in seeing a doctor, but they just want to learn how to do this at home because they want to lead a healthier lifestyle. In fact, they've specifically asked me to design tools to share with them so that they can do the Gonzalez Protocol by themselves. Well, I remember when a famous book publisher came to Nick and said that they wanted him to write a do-it-yourself book, and they were offering him millions of dollars. Well, he refused. He said that it would not be ethical to encourage people to cure their own cancer in their kitchen. he knew it just wouldn't work, because this protocol is a lot more than just a diet. You have to really understand that the science and the biochemistry and the metabolic typing to design your own supplement and detoxification plan. So knowing this, I thought, well, all these people are asking for help. Surely I can do something and help them in some way, shape, or form. One of the questions that they asked me the most is, well, what should I be eating? So I remember that Dr. Kelly had a self-test questionnaire. It was over 1,000 questions, and it was in this really thick book. And at the end of the book, you had to tabulate all your own answers. And it was highly effective, but quite cumbersome, and it takes a long time to put together all of those answers. And Dr. Gonzalez had his own questionnaire that he would use in his practice. He also would ask a lot of the questionnaire questions in his medical intake sessions. So I partnered with some of our doctors and the Kelly team, the ancestors of Dr. Kelly, who have become good friends, and I created a digital multiple choice test. And this is where anyone can discover their Gonzalez metabolic type. And you'll receive, at the end of the questionnaire, when there's about 99 questions, you'll get an 18-page digital printout with an individualized Gonzalez nutritional plan, and it also offers some cooking advice, and that's available on our website. So now at least those people who aren't seriously ill, like we're not encouraging people who have cancer to go off and do this and be by themselves, but anyone who is just interested in knowing what would be their best diet can do this and learn which foods are best for them and what foods they can avoid. So after I did that, I got to thinking, well, what else could we do? Well, even though every protocol is customized diet, customized supplement plans, customized detoxification, there are some common elements. And I thought, well, maybe we should just package up those common elements, because that could at least help people, right? So with the help of our doctors, I published the Gonzalez General Guidelines. This is an 18-page PDF, and it shows Dr. Gonzalez's guidance about general nutrition, supplements, detoxification, as well as how to create a healthy home, because that's one of the things that he taught me in the 15 years we were married. And perhaps most importantly, we talk in these Gonzalez General Guidelines about how to lead a spiritual life. And I just want to quote for a minute about what Dr. Gonzalez would say about the importance of leading a spiritual life and prayer. You see, in the nearly 30 years of his medical practice, he had personally come to realize that the main reason why people don't get well is because of a lack of faith. The way he explained it is that if you don't have faith, it creates anxiety, and that turns on the sympathetic nervous system, and then you get too acid, which disrupts your autonomic nervous system balance. But with prayer, meditation, and positive thinking, it actually neurochemically blocks sympathetic firing and stimulates the parasympathetic system into action. So this is going to enhance digestion, the absorption of nutrients, and the building up of tissues rather than the breaking down. So what Nick would say is, just from a purely physiological perspective, prayer can lead to a healing response. Last year, some of the new patients on the Gonzalez Protocol asked me for some recipes. So I mentioned earlier that I wrote a cookbook. You should know that I didn't know anything about cooking when I first started dating Nick, and he taught me everything I know. So I ended up publishing and writing a cookbook with the help of other Gonzalez patients who've been making their own recipes over the years. There's 150 healthy recipes. And what's different about this cookbook is that it's all organized by your Gonzalez metabolic type. So you know the recipes that are specific for what you should be eating. And this cookbook is now a fundraiser for our foundation. I'd just like to say that this is a really critical moment in time for us. Now that we have our doctors in place, like Sarper, and that we've built these healthy services and tools. We want the world to know so that we can help as many people as possible. You've heard me say a couple times today that I knew something. Well, I knew it because every time I had to make a major decision, Nick was right here, guiding me. Nick used to say that if God wants this work to succeed, it will. And I have felt God's power, and I hope to use that faith that I have found to help reshape the world. These past 8 years, God has led the way for me. He's opened doors. He's steered me towards the right people, like Sarper, who honor the work and volunteer their time and talents. Dr. Gonzalez dreamed of a new medical model where prevention was as important as treatment. He would say, let the current system exist in a parallel universe, and let's start from scratch with a completely new system that's based on nutrition, psychology, and spirituality. You see, we are not trying to replace conventional medicine, and we never try to convince somebody to do the Gonzalez Protocol. But today, Sarper and I really hoped to educate you about the facts about the protocol's success in treating all types of cancer. So today you've heard the data, you've heard from some of the patients who are on this miraculous nutritional protocol. We know that this treatment isn't for everyone. It's not even a good fit for everyone. It's quite hard, actually, to do. It takes a lot of personal conviction, an open mind, a commitment to actively participating in your own healing. But I'd like your help in helping us connect with those types of patients so that they know that the Gonzalez Protocol is now an option for them and that we can reach them before it's simply too late for any treatment to help them. The Nicholas Gonzalez Foundation shares Dr. Gonzalez's dream about a new medical model. We now have the systems in place with clinics like Sarper's, but we didn't come this far just to get this far. Thank you.
Before we finalize the session, I think I have a couple of more minutes to talk. We have brought these aprons for each one of you. It's just outside, I think, on the left in the first. So please pick one, and we'll be very happy if you just take your pictures and then send to us, including the recipes that you're doing. And I really like you to see the pictures of your food. Of course, you're going to taste yourself and with the apron as well. But apart from that, you had my words because I missed the first two patients in the first two chairs that I'm going to share right now before we finalize. The second chair is a UK guy, a famous UK guy, and Sir Roger Norrington.
I think slightly swung is nice. Yeah. Maybe slightly short. Yeah. I'm sure that's right. It should be alive.
Yeah.
It's kind of hypnotic, isn't it? It's kind of. It's very strange music. I like this symphony. It's so unlike the other ones. 9, 1 and 2 and.
Over 20 years. I had melanoma 20 years ago, and I was given a few months to live by my doctors over here. Luckily, I got to hear of Nick through friends in St. Luke's Orchestra, which I used to be music director in New York. And I flew all the way from Berlin when I finished a concert series there one day to see him, and I felt pretty ill. But as soon as I started taking the program, I felt better at once. I've been on the Nicholas Gonzalez program for about 30 years now. And I'm delighted that with Sarper Diler, the program has come back to Europe in a way, from where it began with Beard in around 1900. It's great news, and it's wonderful to be still attached to the Gonzalez Foundation and everybody in it. Thank you.
So here comes the first chair. You're probably wondering who is in the first chair and why I'm passionate about the Gonzalez Protocol. It's this guy over here. He is in the room. Actually, it's me. So I got cancer in 2013 myself, and I didn't know the protocol by then. And I remember in my childhood in a village in Taurus Mountains, this lady has treated without, of course, knowing the protocol with the solid organs of pork to her husband, and that husband lived for a very long time. So I remember that, and in general, I just made up my mind to not to choose, because I was a professor at the university, and all my colleagues and students and professors pushed me to get the conventional thing. And I mean, I was really in pretty good shape, and I didn't have any symptoms, and it's like an atomic bomb in your life when you're first diagnosed. And it really took me 2 days to decide what to do, right? It was really chaotic, so I isolated myself, and at the end of the 2 days, I decided to take the road not taken, actually. What I did is that I stopped thinking about the future. I just tried to live in today and helping other patients, because it's been more than now 30 years that I'm with the cancer patients. First started with the conventional, and then now in holistic side, and trying to help other people and solve other people's problem really relieves your anxiety. And then if you believe in something, the doors really open to you. And these 2 days really were very difficult, and I was sort of feared that my life will turn upside down. And after years now, I can clearly see that the other side, the upside down side, is more beautiful and more meaningful. So this is me on a horseback. So the Gonzalez Protocol is back in UK and Europe after Beard, after 121 years. Please scan our QR code if you have any more questions of how we can cooperate, or if you have further questions. Of course, you're going to ask some questions right now, but I don't know if we're running out of time. So very happy to see all this energy in the room who are taking the road not taken, and I appreciate and thank you every and each one of you.